Hello and welcome to my very first YouTube video. My name is Paul. I'm a product development engineer, and I'm going to take you through how I designed and 3D printed a fully custom mechanical watch. All right, here we go. All right, so where do we start? So I found a website where you can buy a movement and hands, which was a huge help. These things are way too intricate and way too complicated to make on a 3D printer, at least a consumer grade one. So you can see I bought very standard hour, minute, and second hands here, which I'll be using. And I also got a skeleton mechanical movement here with an automatic winder. Watches are pretty simple in terms of components. So essentially, you just have this movement inside of a case. On top of that case, you have your dial and then your hands. You can see the movement is really intricate. It has plenty of gears and jewels and all sorts of moving parts that I just wasn't planning on recreating and redesigning. So what happens with that winder mechanism on a mechanical watch is that's how you wind the watch. There's no batteries inside. It's also how you set your time. And now what I'm trying to solve is I got these really small wrists. So here is one issue I have where with metal bracelets, I go down to the last link, and even then it's pretty loose on me. You can see here, this is kind of the size I like on my wrist, and you see that's tiny. It's 30 millimeters. There are hardly any watches made that size anymore. And just for fun, here's a 48 millimeter watch. It's massive on my hand. The other thing I'm looking to solve is I always have issues with crowns. I never wind them when they're on my hand, and it's also really annoying to try to set the time there. So I'm going to try to solve some of these things. First, I'm going to start off by 3D scanning my wrist and my hand. This will give me some measurements in three-dimensional space that I could start making this watch off of. So here's what the output looks like, and this is what I'm using inside my computer. I'm making these into 3D models. So here, what I'm doing now is I will be designing this whole thing in 3D CAD. So what needs to happen is I need to take these physical parts and I need to translate them into my computer CAD. So the first thing I need to do is I need to measure all of the components. And then once I measure everything, I can model it up. I can get it represented in my computer. So I'm taking very standard measurements here, width and length of all of these hands. I'm going to do the same for every component I do. And I'm going to skip a few steps here, but this is the general start for getting things into CAD, especially when there's not any models available for it. So now with the movements, it's nice because they have all these drawings where I could just basically take the drawings and I could just reference off of them. And you can see here, I'm starting to build the actual case itself. So I'm starting to plan out what is the case going to look like? What's the crystal going to look like? What's the back going to look like? How's the dial going to look? How is the movement going to fit inside here? How are the hands going to fit inside here? So here's just the very rudimentary pieces I started working on. And you could see here now that I added in the movement, I added in the hands, and now I'm putting it up against my scanned wrist to see how it's going to sit on my wrist and how it's going to look. And, you know, that looks like a pretty good size and what I'm looking for. And now to get it into the physical world, I have a 3D printer. It's a Formlabs printer. So here is the guided user interface of the Formlabs program. I've got them all set up in there, and I just hit go, and it's going to make my parts for me. And now they are ready, the very first prints of this project. So I'm pulling it out now, and you will see there are the three main components there. They're very gooey, and they're covered in supports. This is standard with the type of 3D printer I have. Something that may not get a lot of press is that you have to take these off of supports. They are pretty rough. They have all these bumps and protrusions and all these areas that need to be fixed and cleaned up and clipped. So I'm going to start putting this together. I have the gear going on the winding stem. You'll see what it's used for in a little bit. But the first attempt, I'm basically just going to press fit this in there. They got some clips in there. I will caution you now, I'm not wearing my little finger gloves. I am pushing hard on a movement. You should be doing none of these things, but this is it's a first for me making and designing a watch. So I really wanted to figure out how to put these things together. So you could see here, it press fit in there well. And then here is the back. This is another very simple press fit mechanism. I'm not going to try to redesign case back design. And here you'll see, this is the crystal. You'll see that there's actually gears or rack type of system on the outside there. Right now I printed it out in black, but that's eventually going to be clear. And now this is my first time working with hands. I've seen videos on how to do this. There are machines that do this for you, but this is my first time doing it. I am gonna just put it together by hand and figure it out on the fly. So using my fingernail there, I'm able to actually just kind of jam it in there a little bit. Again, really not being precise here. I'm getting my fingerprints everywhere. I'm kind of bending some things, probably damaging the movement too. But it's putting things together. I'm figuring it out. The next time I do this, it would be much cleaner. So I got the minute hand on there, and now this one took me actually many attempts, and you can see I stopped caring if I was in focus at this point. The second hand was really hard to put on there. Could definitely deal better by having a machine to do this, but at the end of the day, it's working, it's ticking, it's moving, so I'm pretty happy with it. And you can see here is the all black crystal that will go on there. And they're actually, those racks correspond with the gear I have on the winding stem. So the idea here is basically this snaps on there and then the whole thing will rotate. And then when it rotates, it winds that winding mechanism. So as you turn this, you're winding the watch, but you also can set the watch. There's some additional design features I need to make in order to get there, but that's the basic concept of it, just taking the crown off of the outside of the watch. So here's the next iteration I'm doing. Now I'm starting to play around with the dial design. So I have the skeleton mechanism behind it. Can I 3D print something a little more intricate? And you could see into the skeleton mechanism now. I printed in the numbers, and I've also added in some features on the side there to start mounting some straps. So I'm also planning to fully 3D print and design the straps as well for this. So my first go is here. I wanted to print out the bracelet basically in one solid print. I've seen a lot of success with this online, but I don't know how they do it. It could be my printer, it could be how I'm setting things up, but this is just one solid block. Nothing's rotating, and you can see it's all just it's basically together there. So I have one solid two-dimensional watch right here, basically, that it could be a wall piece. And now here is that mechanism I was getting at before, where I added this little button in there that basically pulls out that gear. So that's how you can set between winding and setting the time. So here's my next attempt. I've gone into actually just printing out the individual bracelets themselves. So these all snap together. This was my first attempt at figuring out what the overhang would be, what the clearances need to be, and to make it, wrap around my wrist successfully. But I put together a few of these until it matched up with my wrist. And then the next part here, this is the joining mechanism that would be at the bottom of my wrist. So that's where you clasp it all together. And now we're getting into how it mounts to the watch. Similar idea. It's just these two little spring pins, if you will, that you push in and you clip onto there, and they go into these little nubs inside there. And it's good enough for now. Very okay for a first attempt. It's still got to work on it, but the main thing is it can go in, and then as you press on it, it can come out. So mission accomplished there, as far as I'm concerned. A few more iterations later, and I've worked on it a little bit, and now it's definitely a lot more flexible than it was before, and a lot more form-fitting to my wrist as well. You can see here, this is my first attempt at getting it on my wrist. It bows out a little bit up there. I'm going to fix that, but getting onto the crystal. So I 3D printed this out of a clear material. You can see it's not clear though. So what we got to do is start sanding away. So start at a rough grit, outside and inside. And man, that inside was really hard to get to, but just keep on going finer and finer on the sandpaper. And just, there's many hours of this just polishing this thing up and sanding it down and getting to where it needs to be. I went down to about 2,500 grit there, but I went down to 5,000 grit. And then at the end, I went with basically a polishing compound after all that. So you can see where I started to where I am now. It's clear now. It's not perfectly optically clear, but it's better than it was. And now here's just a real quick way of showing you what turning that dial does. And I'm finally going to put on this new clear crystal, and it snaps on there and it turns, and it is winding the watch right now, which it's a little bit hard, but it's doing it. It's doing its job. It's doing what I wanted. And here is the final reveal of it. You can see that's how it clips to my wrist. It's got a little bit of a shine to it, and yeah, job done. If you've made it this far, you've made it to the end. Thank you so much. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And if you like and subscribe, if enough people like it, maybe I'll continue with some more of my projects. All right, have a good one.